Hello Traveler, and welcome to the Invokation Academy Review Session for the new characters in version 4.4. In case you missed it, make sure to check out the earlier review going over the new action cards and balance changes. Overall, the evaluations were pretty close to how things played out, though one update I do want to make: Veteran's Visage turns out is a lot better than I gave it credit for. One thing I missed in that review is that the artifact does trigger while off-field. This means it can actually trigger more consistently against any team with AoE damage like Superconduct or Electrocharge reactions, as well as working with any of your own AoE healing like with Hydra Resonance or Barbara. Because of that, it is a lot easier to get the first trigger for that dieback, making it much better than I thought. So, turns out it is worth a try. But that's enough of my past mistakes. Let's roll on to our first new character, Sayu. Sayu's skill is a prepare skill with two parts. The first attack deals 1 anemo damage, then she follows up with an attack that does 2 anemo damage. But if the first hit triggered a swell, then the follow-up is instead infused with the same swelled element. Her talent uses her skill, and while equipped, once a round whenever any swell is triggered while Sayu is active, you'll draw 2 cards. The fact that her talent doesn't cost any additional die makes it really powerful. Even triggering it once makes it a free strategize, but you can keep triggering it even more in later rounds for even more card draw. Sayu's talent is one of those cards that can actually help you draw your entire deck very consistently, so if you are playing Sayu, always run her talent. Her burst deals 1 anemo damage and leaves a summon that deals 1 anemo and heals the character that took the most damage for 2 HP. Like other mechanics, taking the most damage, remember, is different from lowest HP due to characters like Pearl or Seahorse that have less than 10 max HP to start. Out of the 4 characters released, Sayu probably has the most potential out of all of them. First, she is our first character with a 3-cost skill that hits twice, which has 2 crucial combos. First, if Sayu does have a weapon equipped, both hits get the damage bonus, allowing you to double up and do 5 base damage with the skill. And can get even crazier stacking with something like Wolf's Gravestone for even more bonus damage. Second, similar to Electrocube, both hits can be buffed by Bennett's burst bonus damage, making that also a pretty potent combo. And of course, add on top of that her talent card, which lets you pretty much draw cards for free, and you have an extremely potent kit. Her burst is probably the weakest part of it all, but even that can help you keep your characters alive longer to trigger more swells and draw more cards and make more use of those weapon bonuses. So, as I mentioned, one deck you can try is Bennett Sayu. The third character can be any strong anchor that you want, but I'm going to suggest Lynette so you can get double anemo. The game plan is pretty simple. You rush for Bennett Burst, do a bunch of damage on Sayu using Anemo Resonance to help trigger those swells, and if your opponents aren't dead by then, finish with your anchor, in this case Lynette. Another deck that's been popular you might want to try is Sayu Mona Eula, basically replacing Wanderer. This deck focuses more on getting value from that weapon equipment, as you can use Wagner to search up a claymore that can be used either on Sayu or Eula. And next, another new monster card, Cryo Hypostasis. Cryo Cube skill does 3 cryo damage. Additionally, it applies a buff to itself that causes the next normal attack to deal an additional piercing damage to inactive characters. The burst deals 2 cryo and 1 piercing damage to inactive characters and leaves behind a summon that does 1 cryo damage, but not just to the active character. Instead, this actually hits whichever character ends up being closest to your current active character, which generally means directly opposite. But this does allow it to hit off-field characters. Just keep in mind, this is not considered piercing damage, so it will be blocked by shields. Like the Electrocube, the Cryo Cube comes with a status allowing it to revive once with 1 HP. But you can of course refresh this with the talent card, which costs 1 cryo. Additionally, after the revive, Sheath Hold is going to be applied to the opposing active character. This debuff is the same as that applied by Signora, dealing 1 cryo at the end of the round. Remember, you can't stack a revive on top of an existing one, so make sure to only play this after the first revive has been used up. While the talent card is pretty cheap, you don't tend to solo on the Cryo Cube quite as much as you do on the Electrocube, so being able to revive it one more time isn't as impactful. So overall, I'd probably avoid the talent unless you're looking to have some fun with a revive themed deck. The playstyle of Cryo Cube is really straightforward. You want to skill, then normal attack, then go into a burst, and you get to apply a bunch of cryo as well as dealing a ton of piercing damage. With a kit so focused on piercing damage, you do really want to stack on that even more by running it in a Superconduct team. The most tricky thing about playing with Cryo Cube is the burst. Being able to apply cryo off-field is extremely powerful, but requires you to plan carefully who you're going to end the round on. Just be aware, if the opponent does take out your active character after you've ended, you are going to be forced to switch on a different character, which may ruin your plans. One deck you can try is Fischl, Cryo Cube, Tartaglia. Of course, if you want good Electro application, then there's no one better than Fischl to do that. Opening Oz into the Cryo Cube skills is really powerful, allowing you to make use of a lot of Cryo Cube's application. Then, with any leftover Cryo, Tartaglia can clean up with Freeze, kind of like how Eula works in the Mona Eula Wanderer deck. Of course, any Hydro Anchor can work fine here. For example, Ayato or Yelan could both be your third character. But that's not the only monster card we got. We also have Millenial Pearl Seahorse. Seahorse's mechanics focus around its Pearl armor. Whenever the Seahorse takes damage, it will block 1 damage from the hit and uses up a stack of that armor. While Seahorse only has 8 max HP, it does begin the game with 2 stacks of that armor, giving it an effective 10 HP, just like other characters. And there's 2 additional effects of the armor. First, once around, it will block summon damage without using up a stack, making it even better against any deck with a summon. And as an added bonus, if you end your round on the Seahorse while you have any armor stacks remaining, you'll draw a card. Of course, you're not just limited to those 2 starting stacks. Seahorse's skill deals 3 electro damage, and once around, when used, will add another usage to the armor. Note though, if you do happen to run out completely of the armor when you use the skill, it won't reattach a new one. So how do you reapply armor? Well, there's going to be 2 ways. First is with the burst, which does 1 electro damage, reattaches your 2 starting armor, and leaves a summon that deals 1 electro damage with 2 uses. Effectively, this is just Fischl's Oz, but reapplying the armor. Note that if you already have usages remaining, this one doesn't actually add additional stacks, so it has no extra benefit if you haven't lost all of your armor. The other way to reapply it is with a talent card, which costs 0, but unlike the burst, if you do use this while already having armor, it will add 1 usage. As an added bonus though, while this talent is equipped, you now get 2 free damage mitigations from summons instead of just 1. While it does cost 0, it is pretty rare to lose all of your armor stacks before you are able to build up to the burst, so in general, you don't really need this effect. If you know somehow your opponent is running a summon heavy deck, then it can be worth it to run, but otherwise I'd avoid playing this card. Seahorse is extremely strong. The elemental skill is effectively 5 value, giving 3 damage, 1 electro application, and usually 1 point of damage mitigation in the form of the shield. In essence, you can think of Seahorse a little bit like Thunder Manifestation. The difference here is rather than 1 bonus damage around, you get 1 bonus HP, so trading the offense for defense instead. Not only that, the free draw you get from ending on Seahorse is even more value and kind of reminds me of Thunder Manifestation talent before it was changed. On top of that, anytime you face a deck with any summons, you just get free additional value. So overall, looking like a really strong card for any mid-range deck. And one of the best mid-range decks that I've had success with is Seahorse, Mona, Ashtaha. This deck has a really powerful opening of Mona's skill into Seahorse skill, not only dealing a bunch of damage, but also putting up 2 barriers worth of defense. And this of course sets you up to end on Seahorse to get that crucial hard draw, and then in the next round, you do the same thing, going for Seahorse's burst and ending again. And with 2 monster cards in the deck, you also get access to Abyssal Summons, which lets you power up Seahorse Burst even more, while also potentially giving Ashtaha more elements to absorb. I did recently feature this deck in Duelist Theater, so if you want to see gameplay, definitely check it out. Alright, we're almost done, so time to sweep up and close with the last character, Thoma. Thoma's skill does 2 pyro damage and creates 1 shield in the form of Blazing Barrier. This can stack multiple times up to a max of 3. His burst deals 2 pyro damage, adds 1 Blazing Barrier shield, and leaves behind a 2-use status that deals 1 pyro damage and adds another barrier whenever the character uses a normal attack. This sticks around until used up and is very similar to Xingqiu's burst. His talent uses his burst and increases the usages of that status from 2 to 3 instead. The difference between 2 and 3 usages is actually pretty significant, and if you have a deck built around Thoma, it may be worth including the talent for those extra usages. On that note, really the best way to think of Thoma is like a Pyro Xingqiu. Although each hit gives you a shield, however, at 2 usages base, he's a lot weaker than Xingqiu. Pyro as an element 2 in TCG is a little less powerful than Hydro due to the reactions that it has available to it. While the extra shield is nice, it's simply not that important when you're trying to combo the burst for damage and you'd rather have an additional usage, which is why the talent card is so important. Obviously, you want to pair him with any characters that can react using their normal attacks, but since his kit is a little bit more defensive, he may work best in a deck that is a little less combo-centric and looking more to prolong the game a bit and maybe even burst multiple times on Thoma. So one thing you could try is maybe Ayato, Thoma, Candace. Having Hydro Resonance here helps prolong the game, so you can potentially build up on Thoma more than once. This also lets you get access to Vortex Vanquisher, which can be equipped on Thoma to get additional shields, or even on Candace for extra damage. With this setup, you have a dual carry situation, able to go both Ayato or Candace, depending on which weapon you get from that Wagner gacha. And that is it for the 4 new characters. Even after introducing a lot of strong characters in 4.3, looks like they haven't slowed down at all for 4.4, giving us many more strong options. Hopefully with this, you have all the info you need to go ahead and brew your own decks and try these characters out. If you are a newer player, be sure to attend the TCG 101 series to level up your Genius Invocation game. If there's anything you'd like to see in an upcoming video, drop a comment and I'll see how I can help. Be sure to enroll in our courses by subscribing so you can be notified when a new lesson's available. Until then, class dismissed!